Okay, so we have about an hour and a half ago, we had the short film Murmur, and we have with us Simon Smith. Tell us about your, like how you came to be working on the project, where the ideas came from, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I was, looking for a short film to make, and I met, a bunch of writers and a bunch of people, and I met this brilliant writer named Temi who'd written a sci-fi novel that I'd read, and I just said to her, like, do you want to, work on a project together? And she pulled out a load of old short stories, and she had this one short story about, it was called The Changeling, and it was about a little girl who had autism, who grew wings and flew out of the window. The folklore of the Changeling is, from many years ago, what they believed that disabled kids were the children of fairies, or were mythological reasons behind their disabilities. And then I live in Brighton, and the murmurations, the birds in Brighton, had always been a meditative and visual thing for me, and I really wanted to put that into a film. So we kind of brainstormed a lot, and we had a few little projects that we wanted to work on. We came to that one. We submitted that to the BFI, short film funding platform. Like they've just had another one. There was one this week where you could submit your film and see if you get, the funding. And the BFI did. They granted us the funding to make it. We also got funding from Sky TV to make it. And then that was it. And on a project like that, actually, as much as I'm the director and I'm sitting here, but it's a massive collaboration. Like it's an opportunity for writers, new writers and new producers, and the young girl in it, she'd never acted before, and so it's really a stepping stone for all of us. So that's how we come to make it.
And I suppose the first thing that came to mind was when I watched it was, how difficult is it to get permission to shoot in a place like Brighton? So the beach, we do need proper permission, and it was on a bright sunny day, so you can't really get away with not having permission. And we had quite a big crew. It was a private garden. It was the school where my kids go to school. It was a private house that we found. We put up a post on Facebook and said, has anyone got a house that we could film in? And we got a few that came to us. We had to do all that. There's also permissions around filming with kids. Yes.
That is quite a lot to do.
Yeah.
You're only allowed so many days in a month and so many hours and stuff like that. But having BFI and Sky behind it, helps an awful lot. So everything was, kind of done to the book. There's nothing super controversial in it. So,
no.
But the young girl, she was disabled. She did have autism. I found her through a autistic kids group. And I think she did amazing.
Mm-hmm.
She's absolutely incredible in the film.
Yeah, she is. She's blind.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the casting. And how did the cast come to be connected with the project?
So
because you've got an amazing cast.
Oh, do you think? Did you reckon?
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, so when we had the script, I was trying to think who would be good for it. I've worked for many years in television. And so Mark Lewis Jones, who was the gardener guy, I'd worked with him on 3 shows, a show called National Treasure, a show called The Third Day, and a show called Chernobyl. So I had a relationship with him, and I said to him, can you do us a favour? And he, bless him, he drove all the way from Wales to Brighton himself to do us a day's filming in that garden. And then Brona, I'd seen her and thought she would be perfect, and she was fantastic. And luckily, I had a friend who directed her in something else, so I managed to get that to her. And then, I don't know if anyone would have picked up, but the voice of everything that the young girl is talking to, she's talking... So there's this kind of often, rolled out trope of autism in films where that they might not speak, they might not communicate, and that is a thing, for some autistic kids that they have communication issues. But we wanted to kind of subvert that and have that she's communicating with everything. She's communicating with the whole panpsychic world and universe. So she's talking to the birds, and she's talking to the water, and she's talking to the plants, and the static in the TV. And we managed to get the voice of Chris Packham. Chris Packham being the famous nature presenter, and famously proudly and an advocate for autism.
Yeah.
So to get him, that for the longest time it had my voice on it, so I was doing all the voices, and then right at the last minute, I got an email with a audio file that he'd recorded it himself and he sent it to us.
Oh, that's
and,
really cool.
So I've never met him. I still haven't met him. Because he recorded it, yeah.
The funny thing being is, you, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, so you shared the film with Peter about 18 months ago.
Yeah, so I've known Peter for a long time.
Peter let me watch it.
Oh, right.
Were you allowed to?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay. And I didn't pick up on the voice, because obviously you watch it at home, you're watching it on...
Well, it might not have even had Chris's voice on it at that point.
Maybe that's why I didn't pick up on it. But yeah, and then when I'm in here, I'm like, why didn't I pick up on the fact that...
Also, you might not have had Chris's voice on the version you watched.
Right,
that's really special. That's only... we only got that really at the last minute, and it's only on the UK release.
Yep.
So I showed it in Atlanta in a film festival, and it's not on the American version, but when it's going to play on Sky Arts, hopefully in the summer, and it will have Chris's voice on there. Chris came probably after I'd sent it out, and we had to, and we managed to replace his voice onto it. But yeah, no, I've known Peter, who's one of the festival guys here for a long time, and respect Peter's feedback on films immensely. There's not many people that watch more films than I do, and I reckon Pete watches about 10 times as many as I do.
He watches a lot of films.
So I've got a lot of love for Peter and the festival.
So it's probably you saying about the Sky showing on Sky Arts. So I think probably what would be quite interesting to a lot of people here, especially the filmmakers, is sort of like that process that happens now. So Sky invest in the film, and can you sort of explain to us what that process is? So after they've invested in the film, because presumably at some point they could turn around and go, well, this is a load of rubbish, we don't want to show it.
Well, yeah, and they still might do that. But,
I'm sure they won't.
No, I'm sure they won't. Well, okay, so for people who are trying to make short films, I think it is really interesting. I've worked in television as an editor for a long time. I worked on 2 big Sky shows, being Chernobyl and The Third Day.
Yep.
And as an editor, I spend a lot of time in the room with the bosses at Sky who come in and they watch it and they give feedback and stuff like that. So I got to know them. So then when I came to making a short film, I was in a position where I could say, I'm making a short film, would you mind reading the script? I'm trying to raise funding.
Yep.
And the commissioner at Sky, he was like, yeah, okay, we can help you out with that. And to them, it's money that, they kind of can find down the back of the sofa. And to me, it's enough money to make my film. So it was because of that relationship with Sky that they invested. The BFI, on the other hand, is an open application. So as I say, this week just gone, they had open applications. You could put in your script and your treatment, and you can get up to £25,000 from the BFI. And I'd if you want to make a short film, you've got as good a chance as anyone doing it. It's not like a closed door or something like that. It really is like a proper process that you can apply to. And I think if you can raise funds, it also means that there's more of an outlet for it. Whereas if you go down the route of funding yourself or private funding, there's less of a chance that those people help spread it out. So Sky, when they invested, or when they gave us some money towards it, it came with the agreement that they would show it on Sky Arts eventually, and I'm hoping that's going to happen this year.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So the next question really would be about your special effects. Like, so that I don't want to spoil it for anyone that's just watching the video, on YouTube. But the end scene, how difficult was that whole process?
Okay, so interesting question just to ask about. When you say special effects, do you mean the prosthetic special effects, or do you mean the visual effects of the
bit
birds?
both, really.
So the prosthetic special effects were all like actually on her back and were made by Sophie Giamore, who was the prosthetics artist and makeup artist. And we did loads of tests, and she had to check that as an autistic girl who had sensory issues, how she would cope with that, and what it would look like and stuff like that. So we did lots of testing, and also I hope it works.
Yeah.
I hope it works.
It does work,
I've seen it so many times that like I kind of am very aware of how we did it, and you don't want your audience to be thinking about how you did it. And the key to it, I think, is just cut it, quite quick. Like don't hold on it too long. But also, like, I do love that whole, body horror, prosthetic effect going back to those kind of films. The visual effects, of which there's visual effects throughout the film, a lot of them were done by a visual effects company in California that is all autistic artists.
Okay.
So they take autistic people who go and train and learn visual effects, and then they become artists for the company. I think it's called Exceptional Minds or something, that the VFX company. And that, for me, was great to work with them. I have a young son who's autistic, and I, love the idea that in the future, that there are these now routes for them to work. The final effect was done by the birds at the end. That's in a piece of software called Houdini, which does big simulation effects. So that is a simulation of birds. And that was done by a UK artist who I knew from other stuff.
And so let's throw this open to the audience. Do we have any questions? One right at the front here that I can see.
So what's it actually like to experience a murmur?
Oh, right. What, the murmurations, the birds, you mean? Wow. I mean, so I've lived in... I actually grew up around Romford way. So, and I went to school with Peter. But I live in Brighton. I've lived in Brighton for about 7 years. And for me, the murmurations are an amazing thing. I try and watch them as much as I can. They happen from about November till about February every day. You just go down to the beach, and sometimes they're amazing. And all the ones you see, apart from that end one, are real. Like, they're real murmurations. They would have been filmed on a different day to the actors and then added together, but it's not fake birds. They are real birds. And yeah, it can be like really awe-inspiring, and there's something about that consciousness that I've always found, quite a metaphorical thing. I'd always had these, visual ideas of a face in the birds, seeing a face appear in the birds. So it all just came together, really. And then you've got the wordplay of murmuration, murmur, to make a small sound, and mama is, where her mum gets confused that's the word that she said. So it worked in a lot of really lovely ways, I think.
Have we got any other questions? No, everyone's quiet. As soon as it gets later in the day, everyone gets quiet. My last question, really, for you in that case, is every film has its challenges. When you're actually shooting, what was the biggest challenge during the shoot?
I mean, so you'll forget now, and I forget now, but like a lot of the films that you'll see in this festival were probably shot during COVID. We filmed ours during COVID. We were about to film in Christmas, I guess 2020, I think. Just as it
was the first bad Christmas, and actually Sky and BFI pulled it, and they said, no, don't do it. You know, it's too risky. You don't need to do it now. Let's just, you know, work on the script some more. Let's not do it. So then we were all ready. We were ready to go. And we stopped, and then 6 months later, we picked it up. So it was a long time. And then we started filming, and we filmed on a few odd weekends. And then Brona, the lead actress, she got a job in Manchester on a big TV show. But because of COVID, the contracts on those jobs were exclusive contracts. You weren't allowed to cross-contaminate in other shows, whereas normally they do. They jump around with their schedules. So and I understand, like, she's got a big ITV show. There's no way that she should be nipping back at the weekend to work with a different film crew in a different bubble for a short film that would jeopardize the old people that she might be working with on. So we had to stop again. So I think then we stopped at Christmas then, and we didn't get to pick up again for another 6 months. So all in all, the Murmurations, which are the birds, which I filmed as VFX plates, I actually managed to film those in 3 different seasons, in 3 different years, over the duration of how long we were making that film. So to finally have it finished, to finally be able to, you know, see it in cinemas. Sienna, the young girl in it, I think she was 9 when we started and almost 11 when we finished, and we get away with it. Like, you can't tell that she's grown up a couple of years in some of those scenes. It's the stuff on the beach and supermarket where she's the oldest, and the stuff at the beginning where she's in front of the TV where she's the youngest. But yeah, it was merely the time, I think. The next thing that I'm hoping to do, I've just submitted for the new short film application and stuff like that. But I just want to shoot it in one go and get it done. I'm hoping to, you know, just do a 3-day shoot. Over 3 days. But yeah.
Simon Smith, thank you very much.
And thank you guys. Like, I know it means a lot to, like, come to a film festival and to get to share your film with people. And, like, I really do appreciate you all sitting there and watching it. And I really appreciate Spencer and Peter and, you know, the Romford guys. I think, like, it's a really impressive program that you pulled together. It's fantastic, guys. Really, really good.
Thank
cool.
you.
Thanks so much.
Round of applause. Thank you.